All right, so we are going to start from the beginning because we are having some AV issues. So I would like to call to order the August 12th, 2026 meeting of the Manhattan Beach Planning Commission. For participants of the meeting on Zoom, including applicants and members of the public, we will mute your microphone until we call on you to speak. When you are speaking, please silence any audio on your device to avoid feedback. Furthermore, because not all participants are attending via video, please always announce your name prior to speaking so that the audio participants can follow who is speaking. Commissioner Schechter, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance again?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have roll call, please?
Vice Chair Sistos.
I'm here.
Commissioner Traeger.
Here.
Commissioner Schechter.
Here.
Commissioner Seemack.
Here.
And Chair Hackett.
Here.
Chair Hackett, if I may, real quick, I'd like to announce for the record that remote attendance is being conducted in accordance with the Brown Act requirements for the agenda and for noticing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is the approval of the agenda for today's meeting. This is the time for the Planning Commission to notify the public of any changes to the agenda. Commissioners, are there any questions or changes?
No.
None.
No?
None.
Okay.
Nope.
Great. And all motions will be done verbally today because we have 2 remote attendants. So is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Schechter and a second from Commissioner Seemack. May we vote, please?
Commissioner Traeger.
Aye.
Commissioner Schechter.
Aye.
Commissioner Seemack.
Aye.
Chair Hackett.
Aye.
And Commissioner Sistos.
Aye.
Okay,
Motion passes 5-0.
thank you very much. This is the time for public comments. Members of the public may speak on any item within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission that is not on the agenda. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. There will be a timer on the screen. If you would like to provide public comments from your seat, please inform the meeting clerk or raise your hand. Staff will provide you a handheld microphone to ensure your comments are heard. Is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Hello, my name is Scott Yanofsky, 45-year resident of Manhattan Beach. First of all, thank all you commissioners for the volunteer work you do here. It's great, and I appreciate that. Couple of issues that are coming up. First of all, we have these big buildings going on in Sepulveda and on Rosecrans. Are you making the developers provide a parking plan for their employees? Because what's happening now at 500 Sepulveda, where they're building the senior housing, they're parking in the neighborhood. The trucks are going through. You should restrict the employees building, the construction workers, from parking in the neighborhood and prevent the trucks from going through the neighborhoods because it's becoming a zoo over there. Also, where's your traffic engineer in all this? Every building they're building on Sepulveda, where it says no left-hand turn back into the neighborhood, you put up a little sign. Nobody sees a sign. The only place it seems to work is at the Panda Express, where you pull out the driveway, I think it's First Street, where the driveway turns to the right, so you have to go back out to Sepulveda. That should be a uniform thing on every single project on Sepulveda and Rosecrans where it's going into a residential neighborhood. CUP, you know, it's really ridiculous what's going on in the CUP. Restaurants like Taco Bell and Sepulveda are given hours for their CUP. If you walk up to the window, the drive-through, or in the front, the hours are different. The hours go until sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning. I called the police at 4 o'clock in the morning this year because Taco Bell was still open, and you can hear the noise and the cars honking and people screaming. There's no enforcement. I know you have a code enforcement officer, but they're not there at 4 o'clock in the morning. So what do? You should go, I would like you to see the code enforcement officer go down there, look at their hours, and cite them for that. Also, where Gelson's is, across the street from El Polo Loco was made to make the street wider. Gelson's didn't have to make the street wider. It should have been done uniform. If it's done on this side, it should be done on that side. That's it. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on something not on the agenda? Before we move forward, is there a way to address some of these
Sure.
comments?
So public comments that are provided to the commission during the meeting are just for intake. Staff can address these issues as needed, and I will make sure that our building official, who's also our code enforcement, oversees code enforcement, that he's aware of the comments and can follow up.
Okay,
And sir, if you'd like to provide me with your contact information, we can.
okay, great. Thank you very much for your comments. Okay. So moving forward, next is the approval of the minutes for the July 8th, 2026 meeting. Commissioners, are there any comments or questions on the minutes?
None.
No.
I have none.
Okay, great. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I second.
Okay, great. We have a motion from Commissioner Seemack and a second from Commissioner Schechter. Can we please have a vote?
Commissioner Traeger,
Abstain.
Commissioner Schechter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Sistos,
Aye.
Chair Hackett,
Aye.
Commissioner Seemack.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0, one abstaining.
Thank you. The next item is a study session to discuss a code amendment for a potential minor limit increase for city-owned properties located at 400 Manhattan Beach Boulevard and 1155 Morningside Drive, also referred to as Lot 3. May we have a staff report?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Chair Hackett. At this point, I would like to invite up Associate Planner Justin Urbanski. He'll be making the presentation on the item today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Justin Urbanski, and I'm the Associate Planner that's going to be presenting this presentation for a study session on a potential minor height amendment at 2 city-owned lots. This study session is associated with Project Pulse, which was established in spring 2025 as a coordinated approach for the redevelopment of 2 city-owned properties, 400 Manhattan Beach Boulevard and 1155 Morningside Drive, also known as Lot 3. Staff have been conducting community outreach as part of this effort to identify and envision future uses at both properties. This map shows the location of both properties that are being discussed today. Lot 3 is located at the intersection of 12th Street and Morningside Drive, just to the west of Metlocks, and 400 Manhattan Beach Boulevard is located west of Vaughn's at the southeast corner of Manhattan Beach Boulevard and Morningside Drive. Parking Lot 3 was previously improved with a 3-story, 145-space parking structure, which was demolished after structural concerns were identified during a routine inspection in 2024. Certain elements of the prior parking structure, like the lighting and parapets, exceeded the allowable 26-foot height limit. Notably, the lights on the upper floor parking deck were between 35 and 40 feet in height. After the parking structure was demolished, the city paved an interim 69-space surface parking lot, which opened in June 2025 to provide temporary parking until the site is eventually redeveloped. So the city purchased 400 Manhattan Beach Boulevard on April 15th, 2025, and this was a big deal because the purchase aligned with the city's goals of economic resilience and community engagement. And this site is currently improved with the former two-story U.S. Bank building and a surface public parking lot. And the former drive-through ATM lanes are also currently being used as parking. Now for some background on the project and how we got to where we are today. As I mentioned, Project Pulse was established in spring 2025 as a coordinated approach for the redevelopment of the two aforementioned properties. Due to the proximity of the two properties and their similar site characteristics, the city has been considering the redevelopment concepts for both sites concurrently to ensure compatible and complementary outcomes for these important sites in the city's downtown. At the August 2025 City Council meeting, Council directed staff to explore potential amendments to allow minor height increases at both lots. Specifically, Council directed staff to explore potential height amendments to increase the maximum allowable building height from 26 feet to 30 feet, provided that an at-grade or subterranean parking structure be provided on site. At the March 2026 Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission held a study session to discuss Project Pulse and associated redevelopment options for both sites. And finally, at the April City Council meeting, city staff provided an update on the Project Pulse work effort, and at this meeting, Council formally directed staff to proceed with initiating the code amendment to increase the maximum allowable building height at both properties, provided an on-site parking structure, either at grade or underground, is provided. This map shows existing height limits for commercial properties in the city's downtown area. And here you can see the two properties highlighted in an orange box. Most properties in downtown have a 26-foot height limit, including both 400 Manhattan Beach Boulevard and Lot 3. And when considering potential height increases at both sites, it's important to consider the height of surrounding properties to ensure compatibility with the neighborhood. The block between Crest Drive and Morningside Drive, immediately to the north of Lot 3, currently has a maximum allowable building height limit of 30 feet if an on-site parking structure is provided or if the building has a pitched roof. And many of the buildings on that block are 30 feet in height. Now at 400 Manhattan Beach Boulevard, there are also numerous 30-foot tall residential structures to the west of the lot, west of Morningside Drive, and the Vaughn's grocery store ranges from 25 feet to 30 feet in height, depending on the grade point. Now the city's LCP actually currently allows certain minor building elements to exceed the allowable building height limit. And these permitted exceedances are vent pipes, radio and television antennas, which can exceed the height limit by 10 feet, chimneys, which can exceed the height by 5 feet, and solar energy systems, which are allowed to exceed the height limit by 1 foot. This is the proposed map for the downtown commercial area for the increased height at both sites. And I want to mention that this map mirrors the direction we received at the April City Council meeting when City Council directed staff to initiate this code amendment to increase the height at both properties. And you'll notice that both of the lots now have a new cross hatching showing a new 30-foot height limit. To accommodate future developments at both sites associated with Project Pulse, staff has identified the following potential building elements that may need to exceed the maximum allowable height limit. And these are elevator shafts, stairwells, and associated equipment at 5 feet over the height limit, general mechanical equipment also at 5 feet over the height limit, safety barriers on the roof also are at 42 inches, provided they're transparent or of semi-transparent materials, landscaping and trees at 5 feet over the height limit, and lighting fixtures at 10 feet over the height limit. And this list and proposed height exceedance amount for each element was informed by architectural and building and safety constraints. To better understand the potential impacts that increased height could have at both sites on surrounding areas, staff had a view study prepared. This exhibit shows the location of selected viewpoints for the study. I want to emphasize that this view study is really conceptual in nature, and it does provide a worst-case scenario where you'll see a big building built right up to the property lines. But of course, as the city developing these properties, we have say as to setbacks, design constraints, and things like that to mitigate impacts on the neighbors. So I just wanted to highlight that. And the blue viewpoints are for Lot 3, and the orange are for 400 Manhattan Beach Boulevard. So the first viewpoint is A1, which is looking down 12th Street. And this viewpoint is looking down 12th Street through Metlocks towards the ocean, looking west. This is the existing condition. This would be with a 26-foot tall structure. And this would be with a 30-foot tall structure. Now for the next viewpoint, looking southeast from the steps here at the Civic Center site down Morningside Drive. This is the existing condition. This would be with a 26-foot tall structure. And this would be with a 30-foot tall structure. The last viewpoint for Lot 3 is looking northwest at the intersection of Morningside Drive and Manhattan Beach Boulevard on the corner of the Vaughn Supermarket. This is the existing condition. This would be what it would look like with a 26-foot tall structure and with a 30-foot tall structure. Now we are going to look at the view study points analyzed for 400 Manhattan Beach Boulevard, starting with point B1, which is looking from the residential area to the south, looking northwest up Morningside Drive. This is the existing condition. This would be with a 26-foot tall structure and with a 30-foot tall structure. The next point we analyzed was at the intersection of the alley at 11th Place and Valley Ardmore, looking west towards the ocean. This is the existing condition. This would be with a 26-foot tall structure and a 30-foot tall structure. And the final viewpoint analyzed was at the intersection of Valley Ardmore and Manhattan Beach Boulevard, again looking west towards the ocean. And this is the existing condition. This is with a 26-foot tall structure. And this is with a 30-foot tall structure. And now I would like to show a conceptual design of something that's been proposed by Gensler. I know the point of tonight is not to discuss the conceptual design, but I think it's important to see what a real building could actually look like at the site. So this would be with a 2-story building and a surface parking lot at the rear between the structure and the residential buildings behind it. As part of the study session tonight, city staff published a courtesy notice in the Beach Reporter at the end of last month. We also sent the notice to the DBPA, Chamber of Commerce, and interested parties, and this notice was also published at City Hall and other city facilities. And we did receive one public comment today after we finished this presentation. So what are the next steps here, or what is the purpose of this study session? The purpose is for the Planning Commission to provide input and direction on increasing the maximum allowable building height from 26 feet to 30 feet if on-site parking is provided, and to consider allowing additional height for the aforementioned building elements at both sites. City Council will separately discuss uses and other redevelopment options at the sites in the coming months. The next steps are, first, city staff will consider the Planning Commission's recommendations and directions for this potential LCP amendment. Then there would be a public hearing on the matter before the Planning Commission, tentatively scheduled for September. The next public hearing, tentatively for October, would be before the City Council, and assuming it's approved, it would then go to Coastal Commission for certification and review. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns you may have.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions of staff at this time? Commissioner Schechter?
I do.
Are you unmuted, maybe? There you go.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
You said that the proposed height exceedances were identified by the architectural, building, and safety constraints. Can you say a little more, an explanation about that, please?
Yes, so when designing structures, there are certain building and safety requirements that make it challenging for some of these elements to stay within the height limit. So for example, elevator shafts. It's important that there is an overage for people who need to do work on the elevator shaft, and generally it's about 5 feet, sometimes more, depending on the specifics of the elevator. And then if there's mechanical equipment, oftentimes it's put on the roof, which can go over the height limit, and then there needs to be guardrails if people need to get on the roof. So these are the kinds of constraints that we discussed with our building and safety team, and then they've also been informed as well from some prior code amendments that we worked on.
My turn? What's the relationship or the nexus between 26 feet without parking and with parking? What's the rationale by adding 4 feet to the structure height if you have parking? I mean, it doesn't seem like there's a connection, but.
So you're saying why, so the 30-foot height limit really helps get 3 stories. Without the 30-foot height limit, 26 feet just allows 2 stories. So it would really it would provide the city with more options for potentially redeveloping future sites. And then parking being required on site is keeping with the requirements for surrounding properties as well, which also have that requirement. And eventually the city wants to put parking at lot 3 anyway, because we, had to demolish such a large parking structure. So it's really about flexibility for future redevelopment options to have that 30-foot height limit.
But it's triggered by parking, not
Yes.
by, what you're saying is that 30 feet means 3 stories, 26 means 2 stories. So
Yes.
I don't, maybe I'm too logical here. I don't see the connection between the two.
Sure. So if I may, basically the idea is that you're more or less giving someone a benefit, or in this case ourselves as the city, a benefit by providing additional, or by providing on-site parking. You can still do your 2 stories of structure above it, right? So to get those 2 stories, you need that extra 4 feet at least, or that's the bare minimum that could make, that you could make it work. So you're getting on-site parking and still able to do the 2 stories of
So the
space
parking
above it.
structure is part of the
It would be either
building,
accurate.
but if
correct.
it's surface parking,
If it's a surface parking, it does not,
it doesn't increase the height to 20.
correct. It's
Okay.
just a structure, so
Yeah.
on top of the actual parking spaces.
Like the Morningside building or business center out here has a parking structure below the 2 stories of office use above. So that's how they're able to get to 30 feet, as an example.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. Got through my thick skull here.
Vice Chair Sistos, do you have any questions?
Just a couple of clarifying questions. So 26 feet is the current standard or height maximum for downtown development, just to be clear?
Yes.
Okay, and then we're talking about 30, like potentially going to 30 feet and then also allowing these other exceedances above the 30 feet for things like elevator shaft, lighting, guardrails, and that type of thing?
Yes, let me, just for clarity, pull up the map that shows the height limits because to get a little bit more specific, most of the commercial properties in downtown are 26 feet, but not all. So if we go to this existing map, you can see the Metlocks block within the surrounding properties, as well as the block between 13th Street and 12th Street in that crosshatched area. They're allowed 30 feet with a parking structure or pitched roof.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not able to see that because I can just see you on the video, but that's okay. I remember what you're speaking about. So, okay, that's helpful. I mean, from looking at the two, visually, the 400 MBB, to me, has a bigger impact when you're looking at it from the different views in the view study than Lot 3. And then Lot 3 also is the one that seems to be, the conversation seems to keep coming back to parking for that particular one. So I'm not sure if you need input on both and if the answer could be different for the different properties, or if we just need to make one blanket determination or, point of guidance for both properties. Because what I would say at first pass is Lot 3 is the one that's most logically going to become another parking garage. Obviously, we want to try to get as much parking as we can get there. 30 feet allows us to get 3 stories of parking, and Metlocks is also 30 feet, so visually it's not going to have as much of an impact. So for that one seems very straightforward. For 400 MBB, we're not talking about making that exclusively parking. It's probably going to be something else. Maybe has parking, maybe doesn't. And I see that one as having more of a view impact. So I am not sure if you're looking for guidance to be consistent across both properties or if we can look at them individually.
Yeah, we're looking at any type of guidance and direction. So however you want, if you want to do individually or, whatever feedback, we're here to listen and take that in.
Okay, thank you. I think that is my main feedback at this point is I would say yes for Lot 3, 400 MBB. I think it just depends on how the use plays out there. And I would say if it can be built at 26 feet, that would be preferable. If for whatever reason, because they need to add underground parking or because of the design, but I would say I wouldn't, design it for 30 feet just because, right? I think there would need to be some type of reason for going to that greater height or asking for a variance other than, the architect just designed it to go to 30 feet, right? So for Lot 3, I feel like, again, there's a very logical reason why we're talking about going from 26 to 30. If there's not a good logical reason for that for 400 MBB, then I would say let's stick with 26 feet unless there's some type of rationale that would, necessitate the additional 4 feet. That would just be my personal input. I don't have any other questions at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Traeger, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. The surrounding buildings that are currently have the existing 26-foot limit, do those also have an allowance for exceedances above that?
Yes. Let me go to, well, I realize you can't see the PowerPoint, but yes, there are some allowable exceedances. So,
They just adjusted it so we can now see the screen.
oh,
And
okay,
not you.
perfect.
Thank you, IT.
Yes, so currently on all the properties, vent pipes, radio, and television antennas can go 10 feet over, chimneys can go 5 feet over, and solar energy systems can go 1 feet over.
So it's currently 26 plus up to 10, so really 36, including the exceedances. And then with the proposed 30-foot, what's the highest exceedance that you're asking for there?
Right, so with these two properties, if a property was built up to, or if a development was built up to 30 feet, we're proposing to allow the lighting, which would be 10 feet at the tallest.
Got it. Yeah, so 10 feet for lighting, but 5 feet for the most of it. So it would be 35, except for lighting, up to 40.
Right.
Got it. Okay. So my point is just it's not 26 versus 40. It's, really 26 versus 30 or 36 versus 40, right? To be apples to apples.
Yeah, well, so it would be, yeah, pretty much the height limit, and then if these elements needed to exceed the height limit, it would be slightly over, so the elevator would be, 35 feet, for example. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then I know, so the proposed plans from the July open house, I know we're not, approving or even discussing specifically which of those it would be, but the plans that were presented to the public at the July open house, do you know the height? Like, if this was, if this was suddenly approved as like the plan, what is the height of this one?
I believe it's 28 feet.
Yeah, it's drawn to about 28 to 30 feet, but it's not dialed in. That'll be something that the council will be looking at next month, and it'll be dialed in as part of the entitlement process, which will go through a public engagement and public outreach process as well, so.
So there were two concepts presented for 400 and two concepts for lot 3. So are all four of those concepts kind of in that 26 to 30 foot range?
Yeah, I think actually there was just one concept for 400 at that meeting. I unfortunately was out of town, but the project at lot 3, or the properties concepts for lot 3, there were two there, and everything was within right about that 30-foot range.
Oh, I see. You're right. One of the boards. Yep. I took a picture of it. So it's just different views that it's showing.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. And then, okay. Yep. Those are my only questions for staff.
So I would just say, to clarify, there's a big difference between the whole building being at 30 feet than there is to just have a vent pipe or a chimney or an elevator shaft that's popping above, right? So it's the overall height of the building, and then on top of that, the exceedances. But the exceedances are going to be, minimal. I guess for lighting for the top floor of a parking garage, maybe you'll have 20 lamp posts around. But visually speaking, it's not the same bulk as having the whole structure be, 30 feet versus 26 feet.
Yeah, and I mean we can go into this more during deliberation, but the options that were presented for lot 3 were not purely a parking deck, like they had other things. But we can talk about that later. I don't have any further questions for staff.
Is there any, you have these 5-foot shafts. Is there any restriction on where that shaft is located? Because it was located on the edge of the building, would have more of a visual impact than it was located in the center of the building. Usually, for example, HVAC is in the center. Do we have any restrictions on where those height exceedances are located within the roof line?
In terms of exactly where it would be located, that would be something that would have to be fleshed out more during the building design concept phase. I don't know from a building and safety perspective if there's limitations on where these exceedances need to go. But yeah, generally that would be something we would look at more during the design phase. So at this point, I'm not sure where they would go exactly.
And the other question I had was, everything's 1 foot to 5 feet except for lighting. Is that a code requirement, or is that just a discretionary thing that the
Sure.
community development?
Right, so there's certain language in, I think it's in our LCP, that allows lighting in parking lots up to 12 feet. That is not it's not absolutely necessary to be that tall, but you can't do lighting that adequately serves a facility like a parking deck much lower than a 10-foot light, right? You're not going to sufficiently be able to provide that lighting around the entire property without tons of lights if they're lower.
From personal experience, I did a parking lot for the federal government, and one of the concerns they had was, it was at the National Institute of Health facility in Bethesda, and one of the concerns they had was the light pollution. That is, you have this campus, and then you have this parking structure, and then you have these lights on top of it that light up. And you need lighting for safety. I'm not discounting that. And that's kind of the discussion we had. And we ended up settling in, it was more lights, but lower lights, so that the light pollution issue was addressed. So I'm just throwing that out as part of the study session, is based on my experiences.
Right. And there's no distinction, the lighting height restriction for a parking lot versus, say, what would go in at 400 MBB. There's not really a logical explanation to have a light be 10 feet higher than a building.
No, and I don't think that you would expect to see that, right? The lighting wouldn't need to be on the roof of the building if there's nothing on top of it, I think.
Okay. I do have some. Sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Sistos or Vice
Hi,
Chair Sistos.
thank you. Yes, there's not a good way to jump in when you're on Zoom, but is there a possibility that you could use, if you built a structure that was 30 feet, say at 400 MBB, could you then use that rooftop as a public open space that would have railings and lighting and something like that that would potentially go above? Would this then allow that to happen if the building is built at 30 feet and then you, on top of that, are creating a space, an open space for residents?
Well, it could. Yeah, like I had mentioned, we're at this point not too sure what the designs are going to be, but these are definitely things we would probably flesh out more during the design phase. With the proposed allowable exceedances, I have to go way back, but most of the safety guardrails would be for safety for accessing mechanical equipment and things like that on the roof, more so than a roof deck.
Okay.
I have a few questions. The plan for Lot 3, when we had originally talked about that, there was a lot of discussion about, and I agree that the visual impact of Lot 3 is not as significant as 400 MBB, but there was a lot of talk of a subterranean option and somehow connecting to the parking lot under Metlocks. Is that still in discussion? I know that if everything goes as forward and it goes to 30 feet, just having parking on the first floor underneath the structure triggers 30 feet anyways, but is there any discussion about going below?
It's still under consideration, yes.
Okay. And then both projects are owned by the city. Is the city anticipating to hold these long-term, in theory, forever? I mean, we're talking about optionality for redevelopment. I'm assuming we're speaking mostly about just right now, the present redevelopment, versus the idea of building a two-story something and then turning around and handing it off to a potential buyer 5 years from now.
Sure. So I can't obviously speak to and predict the future, but the purchase of the properties were in part to create that long-term investment in the city's portfolio. So
Okay.
it seemed at that point, at least when we purchased back last year, that the intent is to hold long-term.
Okay. All right. Those are my questions. Any other questions?
Yeah, can I ask one
Yes.
more, please?
Yes, of course, Commissioner Schechter.
So the views that you showed us comparing the 26 to 30-foot structures, can you clarify whether those rectangular blocks that are displayed would be built, are those as built with setbacks, or just clarify how the
Right.
setbacks play into that, please?
Yeah, so let me go to, so generally setbacks in commercial zones are more lenient, like some don't have setbacks. Some, depending on where the commercial property is located, it may not have any setback. That can be built right up to the property line. And these are built right up to the property line, with the exception of on 400 MBB, if you look here, kind of behind that car, we did request that there's a 40-foot setback from the residential structure. And the reason why is because we want to provide some sort of buffer between the residential buildings there. And we didn't feel like it would be accurate at all to just say, you know, have a 0-foot setback in that area or a 5-foot setback. So since we're more likely than not going to do some sort of parking or park let there, we requested a 40-foot setback. So this is the only setback on these blocks. Mm-hmm.
Is that setback relative to the buildings that we're seeing on the lower right of the picture, or the buildings that are on the left side of the street in this picture?
Yeah, so the yellow building has a 40-foot setback from the buildings on the right side of the street, to the right of the car. So the rear face of that building is set back 40 feet from those white buildings with the 2 palm trees.
Okay, great.
And when you say requested, you mean that's like a self-imposed setback that the city is imposing on themselves?
Yeah, and I think it's because we kind of, when we were talking to the consultants about this view study, we kind of used foresight in the fact that realistically, any development there, we do want a big setback. And so just for more accurate depiction of what could eventually be built, we requested that there is a 40-foot setback there.
Okay, and just a second part of that question. So if there's a 40-foot setback and that weighs in on council's decision to move forward with, say, a 30-foot height restriction, that carries forward. If the building is ever sold in 20 years to someone else, that 40-foot setback stays. It runs with that property.
Yeah, and it's not, well, so just for clarification, it's not a code required 40-foot setback. It's more so, like if I can go to the redevelopment concept here, it's more so that it's a voluntary setback. Like we're gonna probably, you know, it's likely that a parking lot or some sort of buffer is gonna go there. And typically for a small parking lot, you need 40 feet in width. So that's where that came from. But yeah, it's not a code requirement. It's just a design consideration.
Okay.
So in this design that we're looking at, is like Morningside is no longer being used as a road there. It's being closed off now for this outdoor seating area.
That's a concept that's been that's being considered and will be presented to City Council. But at this point, really, the intent of the item here is to look at that height issue. I understand that there's a few things here that are looking, you know, that are intriguing. The setback on the rear, that is something that is kind of being considered at this stage, or that is being considered at this stage. The city does own and have control over the development of the site, and depending on how the development plays out, conditions could be placed on it such that redevelopment of the site might require a certain setback. So that's something that could be considered during the upcoming entitlement phase.
Okay, thank you. Could you speak just for a moment about some of the parking challenges with 400 MBB in sort of looking at the ingress and egress and sort of how many spaces you could fit? Because that seemed to be, there seemed to be some discussion around that and some limitations as far as how that site could be used for parking?
Yeah, so over the course of the Project Pulse work effort, we did look at what could be done on the site, and really, realistically, if you're doing a surface lot on that site, you would get no more than 41 spaces, I think, based on the geometries. Based on the square footage and the size, it's very similar to the to the Lot 3 site, but the geometry of the site and the fact that it tapers towards one end, you'd really be limited on ability to get that much parking on the site there.
Thank you. And then underground parking is an option here, or not really an option given the constraints of the property?
It could be. Again, it would still have the same, well, I guess below grade, depending on where there might be infrastructure, you could hypothetically stretch into the right-of-way. I don't think that's been analyzed or considered at this site, though.
And it was off the table for this site to connect to Metlocks, if I remember correctly. They cannot go under, or don't want to try to go underneath Manhattan Beach Boulevard. So really any connection point underground would only be with regards to Lot 3. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that the infrastructure challenges within MBB are significant to the point where it didn't even justify us looking into that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other questions of staff at this time? Okay, thank you very much. I will now open the floor for public comments. Are there members of the audience who wish to speak on this item? As a reminder, speakers should be registered with the speaker host, and each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. If you would like to provide public comments from your seat, please inform the meeting clerk or raise your hand. Staff will provide a handheld microphone to ensure your comments are heard. Is there anyone who wishes?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, my name is Jim Burton. I'm a longtime resident here in downtown. I see some of my next door neighbors here. Hopefully they will speak also. You did get my packet today. I apologize that it was just late. There's a lot of issues. I won't go through all of that. I appreciate the time. I even told Mr. Feinstein earlier, it's easy to be critical on a lot of things and just we're looking at stuff, and this is a massive change to our little neighborhood that we have in this proposal. Staff has done a great job. I've been at all of the Project Pulse meetings, all the outreaches, participated in all that, but this is a substantial change for our little community. And I think Commissioner Sistos, I appreciated your comments about these are separate. I respectfully would disagree with staff or with council when they first brought them together. I think these sites are completely different. I think Lot 3 has a structure that needed to be replaced, is in the heart of our downtown commercial area. Parking, that's great. Where we are here, as I wrote in my comments, MBB for the U.S. Bank or Union Bank, U.S. Bank, that lot is quintessential. I mean, we are commercial on two sides, then you've got residential apartment exactly on the south property line, and then residential uses directly across the street, catty corner on three sides. And I think some of my comments is just that this commission really understands that this is a little residential neighborhood, and a lot of us have been there for a lot of years. And as downtown Manhattan Beach, we've got all kinds of people coming in. That's great. We've got a vibrant, I own a business here, I've had for a long time, vibrant economic. I love it. Visitors are coming in. I love it. But that intensification of use is spilling over and spilling over. And, you know, it's getting more and more. And there really seems to not be a recognition that there is residential uses here. And so as much as I appreciate, you know, the additional height limits and all this, a 30-foot structure with 10-foot lighting on top would kill us. I mean, the light pollution, I mean, you're going right into people. Even when U.S. Bank came in, they put the big halogen lights up. That, I had to spend a bunch of blackout curtains for my daughter because that, and those are, I don't know how tall those are, but those went into us. And so just a couple quick comments. Height limit 36, the 30 feet plus the allowable above that. My request is that you don't go, that you separate the two. You don't allow the 30-foot on 400 MBB, and you keep it at 26 feet with the exceedances or whatever, that's it. And I think what it does not allow for additional options later on down the road. And then how many parking spaces do you need to trigger to we're 30 feet and all that? I'm running out of time here. but to not go to 30 feet, if you do go to 30, specify how many parking spaces are needed. I'll end there. I don't want to be buzzed off the stage, but thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other members of the public who wish to speak on this matter? Oh,
Hi, everyone. My name's Micah. I live right across the walk street from Jim. Whenever they show the aerial photo of the lots, like our house is right there. So I'm more speaking about the 400 MBB. Love this conception, by the way. This is beautiful. Just, be wary of going all the way to the street. Like, it's big. And something that I missed the last meeting where they were asking for the public opinion. We were out of town. But our neighbor mentioned the trucks that are dropping off the food for the restaurants that are already there. If we're bringing in more restaurants, that's going to be more delivery trucks. And there have been plenty of times where it's either impossible or very difficult to get out of my garage. So if there's a place where the trucks could go, like we're talking about that little surface parking lot back there, I think that would be really good. Because right now they block our driveway a lot of times. If they can't park on Morningside, they pull up in that alley right behind and we can't get out. So just think about that when you're working on the design a little bit more. Thanks.
thank you. Yes.
Hi, Bridget Goodman, longtime resident, born and raised. So my biggest question is on 400 MBB. I'm curious what the timeframes are going to be for the new restaurant stores, because the bank hours were 9 or 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., something like that. They were closed Sunday, and I think they were closed Saturdays, or Saturdays were like they shut down at noon. So I think that's a big concern for the residents that are in that area. Regarding the parking, if you do add restaurants, you're adding more parking, which means you're adding more workers and servers and whatnot. And I think the reason, or I shouldn't say the reason, I think we need more parking for all the workers. We need all the permit parking, because already we don't have enough. And I think when we do the Lot 3, that's great. We should add way more parking, because they're parking on our streets right now. And I'm on 19th above Ardmore. And they're there, I don't know, every day. So I think we need to look at the permit parking as a whole for both of these lots. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Dico Kasabian. I'm at the corner of 11th and Morningside, so I have a direct visual of this project. I like the rendering. I would wish the 40-foot setback increases and you allow more room for, as they mentioned, for more loading, unloading. There's been many times where I had to make a U-turn and go back the other way because there's no way to get back onto Manhattan Ave. With diagonal parking, people waiting for parking and loading, unloading, it becomes impossible sometimes. The other concern is the 30-foot. I would wish the council would enact more of the residential type requirement where nothing exceeds 30 feet except for chimney, I think. The light for me is absurd at 10 feet above. The elevator, I'm sure they can work out. Maybe they could use traction rather than hydraulic and not have an elevator shaft. And the 30 feet with guardrail and mechanical could be on a second floor. And the 30 feet, in my opinion, for commercial is probably unattainable. At 26, I get it. You split it in half. You got 12 feet. You need drop ceiling. You need to run your mechanical. I don't know how they would achieve it for commercial with 9-foot plates, 9-foot stories, and then you need 2 feet for mechanical. You're gonna have 7-foot ceilings. I don't see how increasing the couple of feet. I don't think you could achieve 3-story, and it's not necessary. So, and if we were, even with 2-story, if we were to approve a 30 feet, I would hope the second floor would have additional setbacks as indicated in the drawings. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other members of the public who wish to speak on this matter? Okay. Do we have anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak?
Yes, our first public comment on Zoom is Kelly Stroman.
Good afternoon, Chair Hackett and Commissioners. This is Kelly Stroman, the Executive Director for Downtown Manhattan Beach. First, thank you to Justin and Adam for those fantastic renderings showing the different height and what it would look like in the context of the surroundings. It was super helpful. I 100% agree with Commissioner Sistos regarding 400 MBB and feel that a 30-foot structure, the actual building at 400 MBB is awkward. It's out of place for the context of what it's in, or especially around the residents behind it. And even more so, it creates a visual nuisance as you're coming down Manhattan Beach Boulevard, entering into kind of that gateway of downtown Manhattan Beach. That straight view, unobstructed view to the pier and the ocean is so important, and something that so many people and visitors comment on how beautiful, and that's their first impression. So to create an actual structure that is 30 feet and then whatever on top with antennas or shafts or whatever, I think is not appropriate and will diminish the overall look and feel as you come into downtown Manhattan Beach. That is all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other participants on Zoom?
If anyone on Zoom would like to speak, please raise your hand now. No requests on Zoom.
Okay, thank you very much. I will now close the public comments, and now it's time for the commissioners to discuss and provide direction to city staff. So let's start with Commissioner Sistos. Why don't you kick us off? Vice Chair Sistos, do you have initial commentary?
I mean, I think I'll just restate my earlier comment, which is just that I do think that we should stick with 26 feet for 400 MBB. I think is okay to separate these two when we're making these types of determinations. And then in order to because we get such a benefit from going from 26 to 30 feet by being able to add a whole another level to parking for the other property, I am inclined to say go for it on lot 3 at 30 feet. And I don't think it has as much of a visual impact as it does on 400 MBB. So my position would be to sort of separate the two for the purposes of height determination. If some design comes back on 400 MBB, because right now it's all conceptual and we don't have any definition of exactly what's going to go there. So if something comes back and there's some rationale for why, then certainly I think we'd be open to considering that. But I do think because it's adjacent to residential, I think it just needs to be considered separately because of the potential impacts that it could have on the residents that are, directly surrounding that particular property. So that's where I land on it.
Thank you. Yeah, I will, and I'll, of course, pass it to other commissioners before I go into most of my commentary. But it is interesting to me, we're sort of putting the cart before the horse with this one, especially because the rendering is beautiful, but even that rendering by itself, it sounds like would not be permitted because it's 28 feet, but there's no parking underneath it. So it itself would not meet the threshold, even if we allowed the 30-foot height limitation. One thing that is, I'm kind of struggling with, and as I hear my other commissioners' commentary, want to know if this is striking them as a unique situation as well. Again, the 30 feet, it's not by right. They have to have parking on the first floor. So we're hearing two schools of thought from the public comments. One is they don't want the 30 feet, but also there is a parking issue in that area, a traffic issue, a loading issue in that area. And it did make me think, well, would first floor parking underneath the structure alleviate that, and therefore would we want 30 feet? But again, it's kind of hard to come to that conclusion without seeing an actual rendering. So it is an interesting comment, Vice Chair Sistos, to say, if the ultimate design does require 30 feet, could it then just come before the Planning Commission as any other building looking for a variance would need to come before the Planning Commission? So that is sort of what I'm going back and forth with. But I did not mean to take the floor. So Commissioner Seemack, do you have any?
Yeah, it's kind of enlightening about we put the two projects together and we're treating them as an amorphic, mass, and they're really two separate projects. And the lot 3, it's surrounded by commercial, and so the impact there to residents is minimal. But when you get into the 400 project, I visualize like you drive into Manhattan Beach downtown, and you have the Vaughn's Market, and you have this 50-ish looking Art Deco kind of building, and then residences, small businesses along Manhattan Beach Boulevard, and all of a sudden you have this, let's say 30-foot monolith. And I know we're sort of getting ahead of the game because we don't really have a design, we have a concept. And the visual studies, I wrote down, it's like the worst case. It's just a big, so as we move forward, I think kind of lower profile. I like the idea of making that one street more pedestrian. And maybe you could allow, no setbacks that would blend better into that. I'm assuming in your area. Again, we're talking about concepts and our ideas, but I kind of like the idea of a lower profile at 400 and the 30-foot at lot 3. That's sort of my 2 cents.
Commissioner Schechter?
Yeah, I'm in general agreement that we should disaggregate these two properties because I do agree that there are much different concerns with the surrounding buildings, and I don't really see a problem with the 30-foot proposed over at Lot 3. I like the problem that you raised for thought, Chair. I mean, there is the possibility that perhaps could be considered of having street level parking and then just one story above it, of course, right, without, trying to maximize the amount of stories. But I think we should probably use our time to think through our recommendations about the MBB location, because I'm curious to hear the other commissioner's point of view. But we may all be fairly comfortable with Lot 3.
Right. Commissioner Traeger, do you have any comments?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I did want to echo, some of what you said, Chair Hackett, and some of what Vice Chair Sisto said as well, because I do think having that extra floor of parking would make a big difference. But I also just wanted to note that the initial designs that I saw at the open house, even though obviously they are preliminary, that design for Lot 3, there was two different versions, and both presented mixed use retail with community space with underground parking. And so I just want us to kind of keep that in mind. We keep saying having the difference between 26 and 30 at Lot 3 would give us that extra floor for parking, but it could also just be an extra floor of something else, because again, both the renderings that I saw, although that's preliminary, nothing's been approved, and it's all conceptual at this point. But just want to point out that right now, that what we have so far is a mixed use concept with retail and community space and underground parking. And except for the underground parking, that's actually also somewhat similar to what we're seeing as the concept for 400 MBB. What I would like to see, in my opinion, is like a needs analysis of retail versus office, food service, parking. Someone at one point even threw out hotel, community space. And I think that needs analysis would help us see what the uses could be. And then the use would dictate things that the members of the public mentioned, like the hours, the parking, the access for commercial vehicles, the parking for employees. And I think that with the proper setbacks and planning for those things, for the access, for the parking, I think it can work at both sites both for the residential neighbors and the greater community. But ultimately, I think development is so egregiously expensive right now that to underutilize a site because of a 4-foot height difference, that honestly, from ground level, looking up at a structure, I don't even know that your eye would, you wouldn't see 100% of it. You see less and less as you look up toward a higher building. I just think ultimately this is, the heart of downtown, and I'd like to see the space best utilized. And at this point, I just don't want to exclude a 30-foot maximum without knowing what the use is. And I also just want to point out, this is actually, I know, completely neither here nor there, but the conceptual design so far for, I believe it was 400 MBB, included a creative office element. And I just wanted to point out that we have 80,000 square feet of vacant creative office space at 1888 Rosecrans in Manhattan Beach. So I just feel strongly about that point. But regarding the height, again, I think that the 4-foot is a relatively minimum difference. And I'm not saying I'm advocating for or against, honestly, at this point, but I would like to see what the use would be. And I would like the height to be realistic and necessary for the use, because if we find, again, depending on what the use is, we may find that extra story is really important, and maybe we can do underground parking. And to build a 2-story structure right now, where obviously you need a load-bearing ground floor and only build 1 floor above, I don't see any developer that would do that, just because of the cost benefit analysis. The cost of having that 2nd floor is so high, and then to not build a 3rd floor above it, I think doesn't necessarily take full advantage of the space. But again, it depends on the use, because depending on the use, you may not need a 3rd floor. So I really think this is, like you said, putting the cart before the horse, not knowing the need. I don't know how you can go ahead and approve 30-foot carte blanche without knowing what it's going to be. But I would also really like to see underground parking at this site if possible, because I think that would really, again, change what uses you can put, and also change, I think, or address some of the concerns that the community has had, specifically around 400 MBB.
Thank you. This is a question for you, Adam. Not to contradict myself, but because it is like, well, this is not how we usually do things, right? We usually look at everything in light of all of the facts. We have the building design, but I do know there's this coastal commission element. So is it that the process to have the height restriction is easier to go to the coastal commission before you flushed out the entire project, or or if ultimately the way this lands is, hey, and it is an interesting comment by Commissioner Traeger, we are sort of talking about Lot 3 as if it's a foregone conclusion that it will be 3 stories of parking, and it could very well not be that because nothing's been written in stone. But is there a reason we're sort of going about it this way? Is it?
Right, sure. So the issue becomes that when we go through the entitlement process for an actual project, it has to meet the development standards that are in place. Development standards currently in place have the 26-foot limit for the properties. In order to go through an entitlement process for a 30-foot structure, you need to have the local coastal program amended already to allow that.
Okay. So the process, if we were to say, hey, we're not saying that we would never be okay with 30 feet, we just want to see the actual project that would be that. That way the neighborhood can weigh in on it. You know, that way everything can be taken into consideration, the lights and whatnot.
I think that the concern, or not concern, but the issue is doing the level of design work and entitlement process to get to a point of having the drawings ready to that, to that level. The cost and expense and time it takes to deal with that without knowing that the Coastal Commission will sign off on the amendment that type of
Right.
project might rely on, that's where, we would run into that concern. The other issue is the amount of time it takes the Coastal Commission to review and approve or, make a determination to certify a local coastal program amendment is significant. We had one that we submitted to them in October of last year, and we are still working through some of their concerns on it. And this was for the first housing element text amendments that we dealt with, that we brought to you guys a while ago. So we submitted that to them last October, and we have not gotten to a point where they're ready to bring it forward for review and approval by their commission at this time, so.
Right.
I have another question, if you don't mind, Chair Hackett. If we, regardless of our decision today, at this point, if it goes to the city council, whenever it's time to decide on what the use is going to be, the concepts that were provided at that July open house, and maybe we don't know yet, but do we think city council is going to review those concepts and then kind of use that as a baseline and try to make changes and improvements and suggestions from there? Or is it like we're going to have 5 more concepts and the ones that were presented at the open house have an equally likely chance as something completely different to be approved? Or is this like what was presented at the open house is kind of a baseline, and this is at least, somewhat in the direction of where we're leaning?
I think it kind of depends on the community and the council's feeling on the drawings that would be presented to them. I would say that that having had something that's been presented and identifying a design that the community and the council like, that probably goes a long way towards that being in line with what we might actually see. But there's not a guarantee that what is going to be shown is exactly what would be proposed in the for the formal entitlement process.
Do we know if there's going to be another round of changes to those concepts based on those sticky note comments that the public gave at the open house, or is that more just kind of food for thought for the city and city council?
Yeah, so the consultant is working on actually refining some of the drawings right now based on that. Nothing major, is my understanding, just kind of making little tweaks and kind of seeing where, synthesizing those comments and understanding where there might be some easy wins as far as making some changes there. But generally, it's the designs that were presented are really what we're leading towards and moving forward with to go to council. So, but again, and I know we've said it before, but I'm going to again circle back to the fact that what we're talking about today is the allowable height, not the specific project. So.
Yeah, for sure. I guess sorry, this is my last thing, and then I promise I'm gonna go on mute. In the absence of having an alternate design to point to, I mean, does it make sense to start speaking about these sites as the type of mixed use that was suggested or has so far been conceptually proposed?
Can you, I'm sorry, can you restate that? I'm not exactly.
I guess maybe that's just something I would say to my fellow commissioners is, at least in my mind, I think it makes sense to speak about these sites in terms of the mixed use use that has been suggested so far for these sites. So one was creative office, potentially, right? Creative office with some outdoor space. And then one had, maybe some community space with something else down at the bottom. But I don't think it makes sense to keep discussing these as a 5 or 6 story parking structure when it doesn't look like that's the direction that we're headed unless major changes are made at this point.
So I'm a little, not confused, but the process is the city bought the land, and now they say, what are we going to do with it? And they hired an architect and got the community involved in terms of determining what they want to see on that site. I assume, but maybe I'm incorrect in that assumption, is that the city then would put out, call it an RFP to the development community based on city requirements. And the development community would bid or propose on developing those 2 sites. If we kick the can down the road and say, let's do a 26-foot, but then the developer comes in, but if I do 30, it's a much more attractive project. Do we go in and we set the upper limit, realizing that that is the upper limit and we can go lower, versus setting a lower limit and then the development community come in and say, hey, by the way, if I had an extra couple of feet, I could develop it differently, and then you have the revenue sharing, lease issues, et cetera. That's like way down the road. So to me, emotionally, I want to see a low profile structure, but in terms of the end game, the development, are we restricting the development community by limiting that? We can always tell them it's 26. We have approval for 30 from the Coastal Commission, but we're going to just go 26 or 22 or whatever. Is that, do you follow my logic?
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Right. So, and that kind of gets to what I think Justin was speaking to earlier, the flexibility that having the higher height limit would allow without necessarily tying us to going there. We could still require and have plans drawn that show a 26-foot building, even with a 30-foot height limit. It really is just allowing that flexibility should that ever come into play. I think based on what we've seen and what we've heard to date, it really does seem like a non-parking option or an option that doesn't have a complete parking structure is the direction that we are leaning towards, and that's what we're going to be bringing forward to council as the drawing that you saw up there showed. So that would, based on current code requirements, that would need to be redesigned so that it fits into the 26-foot limit, even with the amendment, right? So even if we did allow 30 feet for a property that, or for a project that had either grade level or subterranean parking structure with the building on top of it, not a parking lot, but the actual structure as we talked about earlier, even if we did change the code to allow that, the project that's being considered right now, or that's going to be presented to council, is just office space, retail / restaurant. It doesn't have a parking structure, so it would maintain the existing, it would be set to maintain the existing allowance for 26. Yeah. So it really is that flexibility that I think Justin stated earlier.
So it does seem to make the most sense to go to the Coastal Commission and ask for, the upper bound, but as long as that still gives us the flexibility to say, okay, now when we get more specific and we look at 400 MBB, we only are comfortable going to 26 feet. But if we had the ability to, to your point, we could if we needed to, but we would prefer that property to stay at 26 feet. So you're saying we can decouple those two things and like go to, I think we should only go to the Coastal Commission once, given how long it takes and how laborious the process is. The question is just, do we allow the flexibility of both at 30 feet? And then do we still retain the ability to say, we only want 26 feet max at 400 MBB?
Is it as simple as just 30 feet with a CUP? Otherwise, I mean, not to oversimplify it, but, and therefore go before the Coastal Commission as like, we do have a process to get to 30 feet. That's what we're asking for approval for, but it has to go through.
So in that instance, the amendment to the LCP that we would bring to the Coastal Commission would say it's 26 feet, or through a CUP, it can go to 30 in whatever circumstance, through with whatever restrictions. That could be an option that could be considered. It's a little complex. I've not typically seen in my career issues where you look at a development standard for that would require a use permit. Usually development standards are kind of more, more black and white, but you could, that's not to say you couldn't do that. So it is an option.
Okay.
Yeah, and the public comments that were presented today, I think is probably just the tip of the iceberg. I would think that the community, the residential community, especially on the 400 property, would influence the commission and the council on how we move forward. So we're listening to you guys out there, and that's kind of the way I feel about it.
I want to make sure that I'm understanding the process of going to the Coastal Commission. Is there a requirement that these two properties be considered in sync?
No, the issue that why we would want to do something going to the Coastal Commission with both properties, it's really one code amendment that changes that height limit to apply to both properties as a strict maximum, right? The properties themselves, and I think we've gotten to the point now where they will, the future development of them will decouple. The Project Pulse work effort was to get to this stage where we know what potential future projects may be on the sites. But the idea and the ability for one to inform the other, i.e., if you have a lot of parking on one site, you can accommodate the parking demand for the other site. That's why we kind of thought about things as a holistic picture. But as far as why you need to do anything right now together with the two sites for the code amendment, it's really so we only have to go through Coastal Commission once if we want to actually, if in the long run the flexibility is needed for a 30-foot structure, we wouldn't have to go back to the Coastal Commission again for that other site.
I see. Thank you.
And I think to build on to that point, I would say, I think that Lot 3 could potentially move much faster, and it would be great to allow that to move on a much faster timeline. If the community is able to get to a decision on what should be done with that lot, then we should just go on that one and allow 400 MBB to take longer if necessary, if we need to do more conceptual work on the design on that property. I have one other comment on 400 MBB specifically. I think Lot 3, there is such a need for parking. That project feels to me more like a replacement for what we had. And I would, perhaps it's some mixed use, but I would say whatever additional commercials being added there is going to require additional parking too. So I would say if I were voting that, I'd say let's just keep that parking and concentrate, other efforts in the other location. But I do think, if I could frame a question that I think would be helpful for everyone to use as a filter, I would say, the city has a unique opportunity to develop these sites, and in doing so, to maintain the small town character and the feel of the city. I mean, it's such a great opportunity for the city of Manhattan Beach. And so rather than thinking about how do we max out the size of these properties, I would say instead a useful filter would be to say, what is the minimum size that we need to build in order to meet the revenue target for the property? So each property should have a target what amount of revenue do we need to get as a return on that property? Maybe there's commercial and there's maybe 4 storefronts, but they're smaller, and we can do some anticipation of what the rent would be generated there. We know there's a lot of revenue that's earned from parking. So if you combine the commercial rent plus parking revenue, and then whatever that minimum size is needed to meet the revenue target for that property, then the rest can be opened up as public space or as, park or open space or whatever it is. But I think that, again, we're going about this a little backwards, it feels. So I would say, if the city and city council could apply that filter, say, what is the minimum size that we need to build in order to meet the revenue target for the property? That is, I think, the better than saying, how do we maximize the space and go all out and build 30 feet or 26 feet? Like, I just think we're missing the mark. I'm like missing the target on what we have the opportunity to do here as a city. So that's my 2 cents.
I know that you probably need more guidance at this point, or, I know we've given a lot of feedback sort of where we stand.
So from the perspective of what the commission is hearing from the community, what we're hearing from the community, and what your concerns are, I think that's pretty clear.
Okay.
I think that gives us enough to craft some potential language to maybe consider some potential changes on the map that we showed. But at this point, I think there's enough, we've received enough to know what the commission is concerned with, and to be able to present something back to you guys for public hearing likely next month.
Okay. All right. So with that, do we have any other comments before we move on from this item from my fellow commissioners?
I would just say, I know there was one comment in favor of that sort of pedestrian area on Morningside. I think we already have so many challenges with traffic flow and with congestion coming in and out of the city. And with Morningside being used for all of the residents that are living in that area, it just feels really impractical to take out another road inside of the downtown area and turn that into like a seating area. To me, that seems it's going to create a bit of a traffic nightmare, especially for the residents who already are having challenges getting in and out with delivery trucks and other things blocking, with ingress and egress of parking there. That would just be a side note. It's not necessarily directly related, but what we see on the conceptual map is that as an idea. I just would certainly want to get more resident input on that before that became a certainty.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Okay. All right. Because you feel like you have enough direction from the commission at this time. Do we have any director and staff updates?
Yeah, just a couple things. And I'm guessing that you may have seen, but Great White is now open over on right at this intersection we've been discussing at MBB and Morningside. They were before you, I think it was in 2024 at some point for a use permit. So they have finished all their TIs and they are open. This was one of the items that we talked about having, and there was a condition to bring back after a year of operation for kind of a check-in. So that will be coming back to you guys sometime next summer likely, so that they can hypothetically keep their hours. I think they were granted at 11 o'clock instead of 10 o'clock was what the initial recommendation was. So that'll be coming back in a year or so, but they are now open. The Sonia Toscano item that you guys considered a couple months ago, maybe it was last month, 2 months ago, that has now started construction. They've got their TI permits. Okay. So they're doing the work there, both inside and I believe outside as well for their for their outdoor dining area. And the housing element zoning text amendments, the second round that came through earlier this year, those have been submitted to the Coastal Commission at this point, and we are going through the process there. So I won't anticipate anything from them for a while on that one, since they're still looking at the first round, but it is in their hands at this point.
Okay, thank you very much for those updates. Do we have any planning commission items from the commissioners? Questions?
I would just like to make one comment with regards to the noise levels in downtown after our last meeting around Esperanza. I think with regards to Great White and their opening hours, when we do review that, we will want to be looking at whether or not there have been calls in, calls into non-urgent number to complain about noise, right? So when we were talking about Esperanza, there hadn't been. So I just want to remind and encourage the residents who live in that area that if the noise does become an issue, Great White has a large patio, large outdoor dining area. And so the reason why we wanted to have that 1 year check-in point when we approved that larger volume outdoor patio was to make sure that we have an adequate time to get input from residents on, the residents who live in that nearby area on the noise levels there. So I just want to remind and encourage residents to be vocal about it so that when it comes time for that review that, we can make a good decision based on all the information that's available.
All right, thank you. I actually have a question for staff. The senior center and Scout House development, what is the plan for breaking ground on that?
Yeah, I think that the Public Works Department has gotten to a point where they are, I believe, going to be looking into getting project management together and then going to ultimately in the next few months, I don't know the exact timing, but I know that the building plans are getting close to being ready to be approved. I think there's one more round of review. I don't know if that's in right now. It is in review. So it's probably in the next, I would say, 6 months or so, you might start seeing something going on.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Do we have any other commissioner comments, questions? All right, do we have a tentative agenda for the August 26th meeting?
We do, so we'll have 2 items on that agenda. One would be the continuance of the variance that you guys, that 3 of you guys, I guess, were here for back in May, I think it was. So that had been continued to a future date. That's been renoticed and is going to be brought forward on the meeting on the 26th. And then we'll be having a second study session on the benches and signs issue that we discussed a month or 2 ago here in the downtown area.
Okay. All right. With that, we are adjourned to the August 26, 2026 Planning Commission regular meeting at 3:00 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.